isn't here, and one will not be here, so not only is it her first meeting as an alternate, but she gets to vote in Martin's stead, so.
Quite a great replacement for Martin, I might add.
I knew that somebody would say something. I just wasn't sure that it was going to be John Gilby.
Well, he would have expected it.
Yeah, well, expects it from us, too. But welcome, Jessica. Thanks for volunteering.
We ready, Michelle?
We're ready.
All right, well, thank you. I'd like to call to order this special joint workshop meeting of the Lake Lord Town Council and our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board this Thursday, January 3rd, 2019. And as always the case when the Town Council meets, we do an invocation and a pledge of allegiance, so I'd ask everybody to please stand and let's do that. Okay, please bow your heads and pray with me. Heavenly Father, thank you for the many blessings you've bestowed on our community. As we gather here in public service to our town and its citizens, we ask for your divine guidance and wisdom to help us govern effectively, to do what serves the greater good and best interest of our citizens, and to be good stewards and guardians of this beautiful place we call home. In your name, we humbly ask these things. Amen. Amen. Let's turn to this one. Say the pledge. Yes, sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks a lot. Please be seated. And as Jim said, I thank you all for coming and participating in what I hope will be a very productive workshop. I appreciate, I will say, just as an opening, and I think I voiced the sentiments of our town council, that we certainly value and greatly appreciate the hard work, the efforts, and the good things that come out of our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. You all have been a tremendous asset to our town, and the results that you have been able to achieve reflect, I think, the quality of people that have served on this board, and we look forward to working with you in the coming year. So with that, let's go ahead and for the town council, we need to adopt this agenda, this very short agenda, as an act of formal business. So we have a motion.
I'll make the motion that we adopt the agenda as printed.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Moore. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Very good. Well, that brings us to the one and only item, I guess you'd say, on our agenda. There are several parts to it, but it is the joint workshop with the board, Parks and Rec Board, and as you'll see, at least on our agenda, and I'll kind of go through there quickly for those that may not have it. We've broken the agenda out into, looks like 5 different subtopics to discuss, and I think there's probably an order that we want to stick to here in terms of how we go about our discussion. We're going to, I think, first review our comprehensive plan vision statement, kind of get us all in the general state of mind that we're working from the same hymnal, so to speak. We all have the big picture of that in our minds as we go forward with the other discussions. Then we think it would be a good idea for us, just in general, to review the short list of town facilities. I say short list, it's not all that short. It's a pretty long list of things. And the reason, I think, for that was something our town manager had suggested and I agreed with is as we focus down on our parks and rec assets and facilities, it's important to know that whereas the advisory board, that's what you are charged with looking at and focusing on and making the best there can be for those assets. But as a town council, we have to look at those assets in the bigger context of all the assets of the town. And so when we're making decisions or having deliberations about anything in the town, whether it's parks and recreation or any other public works or any other subject, we need to be looking at it from a very broad context, and that's the way we have been looking at this issue with respect to the Parks and Rec leadership, let's say that. And so I want us to kind of get the context of that and see how the Parks and Rec assets quickly fit into the overall. And then we'll focus down on those lists of Parks and Rec assets, at least what we think they are. So now we're in the proper context of this discussion about how we're going to lead these things in the future, I guess, and manage them and direct them, okay? And so then, once we've gotten down to that focus point, then I think in a general discussion, before we talk about a position description or a role or whatever that is, I think we can have a good open discussion about what it's going to take to manage and direct those assets then, based on what they are. And from that then would obviously then flow a position description of someone in a position who would be overall responsible for providing that management or leadership or direction. Okay, so that's the way we constructed this agenda, sort of to start out with the real big picture and then focus right down onto the question of the day, and that is how should we lead the Park and Rec function of the town, and how would we define those roles and responsibilities before we go out trying to fill a position of that nature, okay? So I saw somewhere here the Town of Lake Lure vision statement. I don't know whether you all have copies of that. I see some of us do. It's in the package. I thought I would, bring that out. But I mean, we can all read it, but I'll go ahead and read it. You can kind of read along with me silently. And that vision statement reads, Lake Lure, the gem of the Carolinas, is a mountain lake community that has a harmonious balance of interest of our citizens, businesses, and visitors, achieved through open communication and managed growth that emphasizes fiscal responsibility and stewardship of our natural beauty and environment. So I think captured in there is sort of, we're trying, to capture what is the essence of our, what is really a resort town. It's what we are. A destination, but it's also a hometown for a lot of us who live here and work here and I guess play here. And so, we're a couple different things. We're certainly a tourism destination, but we're also a hometown. And for some people, a lot of people, we're a part-time hometown. Come here when the weather's nice, which seems to be less and less these days. And so just to give you the idea, that's the notion of our vision statement. I don't know if anybody has any other comments about it, but that's how it reads, and I think that's what it's intended to demonstrate, that we're a combination of things here. And, yes, go ahead, Larry.
I'll make a couple of comments, Kevin, if I can. Thank you. Fiscal responsibility, I think the Parks and Rec Board has done and continues to do a really, really good job of creating park and rec assets for very little money at the expense of the town and the taxpayer through grants and through other means. So I think Parks and Rec has done a great job at that. Stewardship of our natural beauty and environment, I think what we in Parks and Rec try to do with that is to uncover and maximize the potential benefits of the environment that we have. and particularly with regards to outdoor recreation. And we'll talk a lot about that today, I think. So I think with regards to the vision, even from an overall town perspective, the Parks and Rec Department has done a really good job of fulfilling that mission. And we may do it with a slightly different lens on, but at the same time, I think we do fulfill the mission.
I think we pretty much all agree with that. Everybody have any other, that's good to point that out. And all that's kind of, I think, embodied in that vision statement. So, yeah, I think it's all, we're being consistent with what you're doing. I agree. Okay. All right. If there's nothing else on that, then we've got our arms around that. Let's look at the list. You should all have that. Rather lengthy list, called a short list, but of all of these town assets. And Shannon kind of put this together with help from Sam Carr, our financial director. Sam's help came out on the columns out towards the right, where we're trying at least to get in the ballpark of what our yearly revenues income is that's derived from these various facilities or assets, you want to call them, and then what are the ongoing costs that the town bears for those particular assets. Now, what I would point out to you, which is not necessarily obvious from this chart, and I was not surprised, but it's a major consideration, is when we talk about the yearly ongoing costs, those are not the costs for staffing, labor, personnel. Those are simply, I hesitate to use the term out of pocket, but they are the non-personnel related costs as best we see them, to operate these assets. So bear that in mind as you look down through there. Obviously, as you look down through the last column, some of our town facilities make money and some of them don't. And that's why we have taxes. So we have to make up the difference. So we have to pay, for facilities. Not every one of them can be monetized, and not every one can be monetized to the level that generates a net income, especially not after you apply personnel costs.
It almost seems to me, and no offense to Sam, I know he's not here, it almost seems to me this was a very kind of accounting profit and loss approach, which smacks in the face of the public sector government, to be quite honest with you. So I don't really agree with this approach listing the various assets, Kevin. I think it does it injustice with regards to what we have, the criticality of it. Even the primary use, I was a little taken aback by the fact that Buffalo Creek Park and Weep Half Mountain Trail are listed only for tourism.
Right.
I'm a taxpayer, I'm a voter.
Exactly.
I go
And I do it all
there.
the time. And
Well,
so
that's
do a
what
lot
she
of
said.
Yeah, I don't think that designation is correct.
I also think the definition of monetization needs to be questioned. One definition of monetization is direct payment for an activity. But again, we're a government, we're a public sector. There is a valid and strong argument for economic development impact, direct economic development impact, indirect economic development impact, and induced. Where direct is people coming and spending money in town, let's just say a tourist comes and spends money at our hotels, at our restaurants, at our retailers. That's direct economic impact activity, right? Indirect is then that retailer, that hotel person, that restaurateur turning around and spending money to buy supplies, to pay for labor, etc. And then the induced economic impact would be those employees, etc., then spending money within the community again. So it's a wonderful circle and cycle of spending that all benefits the government from a tax revenue perspective, which again is not listed here at all. So when I looked at this, I kind of questioned the completeness of it, let's say.
Well, it certainly wasn't intended to be all-encompassing and complete. It was put together for the purpose of saying when we, as a town council, we look at the town's assets, we do consider what the income potential is from those assets. I take a good example would be the dam and the hydroelectric station. As an asset, we've proven to ourselves in the last year that by spending more attention on what the income producing potential of that facility is, it can have a dramatic impact on the town's bottom line. What you see here, for example, the income from the dam shown is $400,000. And historically, that's been about what we expect and what we've seen on average from the hydroelectric plant. We've taken a closer look at that system and determined, it has a lot more potential associated with it than what we've been able to tap into. And so we set out this past year, for example, to try to manage that facility better, to maximize or at least increase the amount of income that we get from that. It goes into the town's coffer that now we are needing to use as opposed to tax dollars to renovate that dam and to pay for the operation of that whole system that creates the lake. And having done that now, we now are averaging something at or above $60,000 a month in electric revenue, and it's been consistent now pretty much all year.
And I think that's a great example.
And so now that puts an additional $320,000 into the town's coffers to pay for the necessary maintenance and renovation of those assets. And that's $320,000 that our taxpayers, property owners, are not going to have to pay for those critically important and necessary improvements. So I give you that example. And as we look at each and every one of our assets, our facilities, we look at that. Is it possible to do that in every case? No.
I would say it's not the norm.
Some of these assets, we just can't monetize, or at least monetize to the point where their net income produces, and no one expects that in a town. We pay taxes to have assets that we can enjoy and that create maybe economic development that's not direct income.
Well, and
so understand that we know that when we put this thing together.
And I'm glad you said that, and I appreciate you saying that. And it's not the norm at all that government assets produce those kinds of things. In fact, it's the exception to the rule. We're fortunate, we're blessed to have that asset here. But the norm, and my point is, don't get lost in the fact that every single one of these other park and recreation assets.
I know what you feel.
Creates an economic.
I know where you think this is all heading, but it's not necessary.
No.
I'm just pointing out that
just
some of
from
these
looking at this, that's the point that I came up with.
I have a big question. I don't seem to see where boat permits revenue is included in here anywhere. I mean, that's a big recreational asset, a revenue producer. And where is it showing up?
Lake.
Marina?
I thought that was from the generation from the power plant.
No. $400,000 is the generation from the power plant. The vast majority of the $405,000 is from boat permits.
Additional.
Yeah.
So that's 800-some thousand. That's
If you look at that
from
chart,
the power plant and the.
Right.
so you have its weight and then it's down.
Lake is a boat. And there are other, boat permits, as fishing, so that's what that is.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah.
I also noticed that charges here, arbitrary numbers as far as expenses. You said it's not any salaries.
No.
It's just, well, I don't see where $5,000 is spent every year some of these parks?
To be honest with you, Ed,
It's all
I can't go
volunteer
into
labor,
that
most of it.
level of detail, but I don't know whether there's,
I can answer that.
yeah,
So we took the AmeriCorps volunteer contract and we amortized that out over 3 assets, and then we also added in staff hours spent, so that's where that
Oh, so
5,000.
you didn't use labor costs then?
So,
We strictly used the cost of the contract.
Okay, but you said you put staff hours in there as well.
Some staff, yes. So we amortize the contract 40%, 40%, 20%. And then we have some actual staff hours that are actually, yes. I think it's about $1,000 staff.
But you're not including volunteer hours or anything like that?
No, we did not include volunteer hours. We just, it's the cost of the contract itself. It's the only thing we could.
I think, look, and I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I don't know if these numbers are accurate, because those percentages may not be accurate in terms of applying it from the AmeriCorps. But I understand what you did, and you got to take that cost, which is strictly and dedicated to the maintenance of the parks, and that's where you put it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I put some disclaimers in the well outs to, for this to be used in a general sense. These numbers, we can split here all day over these numbers. But I think it's just meant to give us some sort of general sense of apples to apples using dollars to see where we are with revenues and costs per asset.
If I might add, a really good example is the Flowering Bridge. As you know, in the Parks and Recreation budget, there's $5,000 for the Flowering Bridge. But we also provide electricity for the Flowering Bridge and the water. And the town doesn't pay for the water, but we do have to pay for the electricity. So that 8,800 is probably a pretty accurate figure, maybe even a little bit low on the cost to the town for the Flowering Bridge. But I wanted to add too, I noticed on the second page under recreation facilities, when we get to it, Flowering Bridge should be listed on that page as well. It is a recreation asset as previously determined, and the Parks and Recreation Board has a constant representative from the Flowering Bridge on the board, and that's Bill Massey. So that should be included in that list as well.
Sure, that's good. Can I send out an email to that effect?
Yeah, Shannon acknowledged it.
yeah.
The one question too is down at the bottom of the town facilities is Lurmont Properties. Is that the proposed Lurmont Trail?
Yes.
That was a good question, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, for what it's worth, I mean, I just wanted everyone to know, it's certainly not the only criteria that the town council considers. When we look at different facilities and what is it costing us to have these facilities, and how can we, as a question we always ask ourselves, how can we lessen the costs, or if there's an opportunity to increase the income, we have to look for that. I mean, the taxpayers expect us to look at things that way. Otherwise, we'll just keep raising taxes and writing bills, or we won't do anything. I mean, so that's just a part of the thought process that we all go through, and we apply it to every, we apply it to all of these facilities. And we also apply it then to those recreation facilities that are included in the town assets, just to know that. Interestingly, I don't know if you did just to do that, I mean, and really, it's really all about the dam and the hydro station. And I can tell you right now, that $400,000 number really should be $320,000. And we're gonna hold ourselves accountable for that, believe me. The $400,000 income from the hydro station should be $720, and it will be $720.
Yeah,
we
hadn't got that, I hadn't seen those December numbers.
So when you add up all, which I did, I added up the whole column of yearly income. It came up to about a little under $2.2 million, and you add up the whole column of expenses, and it comes to about a little under 1.4. So there's about $800,000 of net income before, even though there was a little personnel salary apparently in that one. There's not, we didn't apply any of our staff costs. So $800,000 from all these right now. And if that's $300,000 more, that's over $1 million coming to the town from operating our facilities effectively.
We have to keep in mind, though, that we've had a lot of rain the last couple of years. And prior to that, we had a couple of years where we were really drought. So I think, over time, probably the 400 may be closer than you think.
Average out.
Somewhere between the middle.
So I think that's a story of those two, really, of those two charts, and we just thought it would be a good idea to put those out there, so, not just what the assets are, how recreational assets fit into the town's overall scheme of things in terms of all the facilities we have. It's definitely a different classification of facilities than, say, a hydroelectric plant. Nobody's trying to make it the same or equivalent to it. We're just simply saying we view them all the same in this way, just to say that. Okay.
Some good work on those charts.
So, so now let's just discuss, and I guess we can, if we add the flowering bridge to the mix of things, then if we just take the second chart here and add the flowering bridge, then these, at least from our perspective, from the staff's perspective, and I looked at it, these are all of what we would term recreational facilities. Okay? Now, it's a list.
The Warmock should be on here too. The proposed Warmock Trail should be on here too.
So the Warmont would be on there, and the flowering bridge. And, all right, so with those added there, you look down there, and there are various kinds of recreational facilities. Some are, I guess if we wanted to draw a big line down the middle, we'd say some of them are land-based, and some of them are water-based. Meaning our lake, right? That's the one way to look at it. But even within the land-based recreational facilities, there are different classifications, because we have trails, right? And we have parks, and we have, I don't know, something a little bit in between, which might be the flowering bridge. So even within the land-based sides, we have different kinds of facilities that we have, and each one has a little bit different, I would think, different requirements, in terms of what you need and what you need to know to own them and operate them and maintain them, right?
Yeah, if I might, the previous discussions regarding the flowering bridge and with regard to Parks and Recreation was that, of course, they're managed by their nonprofit and operated by the volunteers there, but the Parks and Recreation Board would have administrative oversight for any budgetary things and be included in that, and the representative would always be on the board, and of course the town has the responsibility for the bridge itself, which was donated to the town with a $120,000 fund. Some of that money has been spent. At some point in time, it probably needs to be beefed back up, and it's for demolition of the bridge should it ever have to be removed, which hopefully it doesn't happen, or if the flowering bridge ceased to operate as a flowering bridge. But that's how all that played in, and that was all the previous discussions on whose role is where and who has what kind of oversight on it. So.
Okay. So that's a good description of how the advisory board here kind of fits into the leadership role and has in the past. Now, the other way to kind of look at these different facilities, and you brought this up, is some of these are operated and maintained by the town staff, right? Some of them are operated and maintained by private entities outside the town, the concession agreement, right? And some of these entities, for the most part, are operated and maintained by volunteers. A good example being the Flowering Bridge and some of these trails, the Diddler Watts trails. They're totally, and I don't know whether there's even a fourth, if you want to consider the way the Weed Patch property comes, because there you've got another entity.
Conservative Carolina.
You've got Conservative Carolina and America, and those people
And
are,
state-
at
and state
least
park.
for the time being,
Right.
are operating, maintaining those facilities, right? So we have a number of different ways that our town facilities operate and are maintained. So that's to keep in mind, okay? So with all that in mind, and therefore, if somebody else is doing it, we're not. I mean, that's the point, but somebody else is doing it and we're not. So then we don't, other than oversighting that, like the concession agreement or the Weed Patch for the time being, we're just kind of watching over that. Whereas the other things are our volunteers are doing the heavy lifting, or the town staff that gets paid is going out there every day and dealing with not just the normal maintenance, but, you know, I mean, this has raised havoc, this weather, on our assets. I mean, anything that's land-based, we've had a horrendous year of unexpected calamity that we've had to deal with and expense. So just to get that, you know, in perspective, that's where we are. Okay, having said all that, I'm going to shut up now because this is not Kevin Cooley meeting, it's your meeting. Just wanted to kind of set the stage and get this all out there on the table. So now, thinking about all that, and all these assets here, we got to manage them. And so I guess the question before us, before we actually get into it, and we've already answered it in some ways, the draft of job description, is what kind of stuff we need to manage all this stuff. And so, and operate it and maintain it, right? So what do we do? I mean, we've been doing it, so, and I think we're getting by. I mean,
Maybe we could do it better.
maybe.
Yeah.
So how could that be?
You've talked about the assets here. Shannon's gone on record as saying the lake is a complex asset to monitor, manage, and maintain. No one would disagree with that. I would submit to you that the parks and recreation assets, the parks, the trails, all those things, based on the requirements that they have, and based on the opportunity in front of us with regards to those assets, from a health and well-being of our citizenry, from a tourism perspective, from a opportunity for economic impact opportunity, I would submit to you that those things are complex and deserve a dedicated resource as well. That is why, when the town council approved the Parks and Rec director earlier this year, we applauded that. We thought it was a wonderful thing to do, and even appropriated funds for that individual. And the Parks and Rec board feels strongly that that's how it should be, because of the nature of the two primary assets that we have, the lake being one and the Parks and Rec assets being the other. You don't want to shortchange one or the other. You want to give them both their due, and you want to maximize the opportunity that you have with both of those.
So before we actually get into the differentiation of the position itself, I think the point you're making, other than having two separate or whatever, is that the requirements, the knowledge, and the leadership, and then we're talking about a leadership position here, you see it being very different in terms of what we would have to provide leadership of the lake.
Yes.
And what we would have to provide leadership in land-based parks and trails, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
one.
and let me, and if I can just enhance on that a little bit, Kevin, the lake is a very regulatory type of thing, right? Dean does a great job. That skill level is needed, and we're glad we got it. The skill level required for Parks and Rec is somewhat different. It's more recreation. It's more take advantage of opportunities, whether you call that, leagues, groups, venues, events, different things like that. Those are, in my opinion, and the opinions of the board here, completely separate and distinct skills and experience levels that need to be in place.
So the events part, you think is?
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it.
Promotions, events,
Promotions.
Programs.
programs, incentives for people to come. There's 300 climbers coming to Rumbling Ball in February. Climbing is a winter sport.
Right.
We could organize an event. We could enhance that. Last year, there were 300 people. There could be more this year. We're not taking advantage of that economically.
No, the various activities that are available within the Parks and Rec space. Those skills and experience, knowledge base, if you will, are completely separate than a highly regulatory asset, which is in the lake, which needs that. You need somebody doing that for the lake. And again, highly complex to monitor and manage and maintain that. Absolutely. We got a great guy doing it. Glad he's here. The Parks and Recreation, skills, experience, certifications, credentials, all those things that are needed.
So you're saying, in terms of leadership or management, and that's, I kind of want to get more into the generic form of this rather than person form. You see the need being of someone who really understands the operation and management of these kinds of assets, parks, trails, recreational, land-based recreational facilities.
Absolutely.
That being different maybe than your perception of what the knowledge base would be of a person who really understands the water side of the lake and recreation. Now, having said that, the lake has events and
They can overlap,
activities,
for
things
sure.
That certainly go on. We're about to have this spring a classic example of where they overlap. A classic boat and car show. And car show. So obviously, it's a water-based and land-based event. And I don't think it's unique. It's not, there are separate events, but the Olympiad, the swimming event on the lake, the biking and the running events up here, there are multiple opportunities, and we have already demonstrated that, where events in this community could take advantage of multiple assets, recreational assets.
There's a lot of untapped potential available in recreation that the town is not developing because we do not have a person to oversee that. And that's providing direct benefit to our residents and taxpayers. And that's developing recreational programs. We have not had a facility until recently. We're about to have a gymnasium, to have recreational programs for adults, to have leagues, adult leagues and things like that after school hours. The school has said they would welcome that as shared partnership with the town. We do not have the personnel to do that. We have the senior programs that could be developed if we have the personnel to do that. And that would have direct benefit to our town residents, and they would greatly appreciate that. That's not being developed.
So it's an opportunity.
Exactly.
It's sitting out there.
It's a missed opportunity.
And it needs, what you're saying is it needs leadership.
It needs a face.
Management.
Kevin, I've put together a presentation, I don't know if anybody's noticed it up there. If it pleases the mayor and the town commissioners, I'd be happy to go through it. It might give us some good talking points of things as well.
In terms of what
In
kinds of
terms of what
things
they
are,
need.
yeah, I just want to make sure that we're on this item, which is what you need in the job description, not
Yes.
necessarily the job description or the organizational structure of which it exists.
No, I think some of those things overlap. I mean, I think, and it's natural that they overlap, and that is in that. I won't say it's not, but I think it makes sense that it is in there.
Okay.
This is the We haven't had a lot of time between when this was announced, so I've kind of put something together. Appreciate the time of council, absolutely and unequivocally. But I think this might give us a good point. It might help you guys understand where the Parks and Rec Board is coming from and give us some talking points to that.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Do we have any, we're good with that?
All right, very good.
Let's do it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's right back here from John's. You guys should be able to see it. Parks and Recreation Director, the face of Lakeville Recreation for the future of Lakeville Recreation. And I'll be doing these sheets up here, guys. This is what Lakeville needs. This is what the Parks and Rec Board feels Lakeville needs, and this is what the Parks and Rec Board supports enthusiasm.
Can everybody hear him okay?
Do I need to speak to this? Is this honors? I don't
It's
think so.
not plugged in.
If I'm not loud enough, though, then just
We got one of these.
Nah, don't worry about it. If I'm not loud enough,
Yes,
just let me
speak a
know.
little
If
louder.
I can hear you, you ought to be okay.
What's that?
I said if I can hear you, you ought to be
We're in
okay.
good shape. We're in good shape. Okay, so, as I mentioned before, the town council approved the Parks and Rec Director position earlier in the year. We believe that it was absolutely the right thing to do. What is on the table proposed by the town manager is, and that's over on the left there, right? You see a Parks and Rec Director, a Lake Ops Director, Melody and her team down below in the lower right-hand corner. Lakes and Park staff, I mean, Shannon has come out and said everybody here has to wear multiple hats. Absolutely. We can get people to help out a Lake Ops Director, we can get people to help out a Parks and Recreation Director. Okay? Garrett, I have never met Garrett, but I hear he's a great guy. He'd be a perfect guy to put in that role right there. The town manager has proposed a different structure. We on Parks and Recreation don't agree with that, right? We feel strongly that some of the tangible skills, and this is not an exhaustive list by any chance, by any way, shape, or form, rather. We feel strongly that there's some tangible skills that are needed and reason why a Parks and Rec Director is needed. That person is going to need to perform complex professional and managerial work to maintain the existing Parks and Rec assets at a high level. We went through that list, and that list is growing and should grow. To develop and grow the additional assets that we have, to develop and grow the recreational opportunities and economic impact opportunities by maximizing the town Parks and Rec assets. I cannot stress that enough. That, in and of itself, and we haven't talked budget yet, that in and of itself will pay for a director position over and again.
And you say that based on what?
And I will show you some economic impact.
Okay, good. So you have that?
Yes, I do. We also need the director to cultivate partnerships and collaborate with external organizations and do much more. This organization can be done, this structure we have here on the left, can be done with current approvals that are in place from town council. We have the director approved. With current funding appropriations that have been put in place by the town council. That is in place, albeit for $40,000 for 6 months, but it's in place. By current staff, I mentioned Garrett. Dean is at Lake Ops. You got to hire a Park and Rec Director. Melody's down there with Parks and Rec Supervisor and team, and obviously we have the town manager and town council. We're not looking for more money than you guys have already approved. All right? So let's talk about why a separate and dedicated director is needed. Let's look at our assets again. I would submit to you that these assets, in contrast to what was on that spreadsheet, these assets are just as essential as any other asset that we have. Why? Why is that the case? Why do people come to Lakeville? What do we have to offer the citizenry and the visitors to Lakeville? We have our natural resources. We have a demand for outdoor recreational development and use of those natural resources. That has largely been, I won't say largely, to some extent been untapped. That has a ways to go. These assets are no less critical than any other. These are essential assets with use cases that we included, and we talked about this, Kevin. You got parks, you got trails, we got 17 miles of trails. That is not insignificant for a small municipality the size of Lake Lure. Okay? We've got hiking use cases, mountain biking use cases, rock climbing, bouldering, recreation, quality of life, and good health. Events, festivals, it goes on and on. Okay? All those things are a large part of the reason why people come to Lake Lure. We need to give them a reason to come here and to stay here, and the economic impact will grow from that. For our residents, for our businesses, and for our government via tax revenue increases. Goes with one, comes the other. So let's talk about real economic development. Kevin, you asked the question. Thank you very much. At a national level, 7 for outdoor recreation. And I have the studies I've got right here. I'll be happy to share them with you in hard copy or in soft copy. This folder, 8 of them. 8 economic impact studies. Nationally, $7.6 million jobs are created from outdoor recreation. $887 billion in consumer spending from outdoor recreation. $65.3 billion in federal tax revenues and almost $60 billion in state and local tax revenues. Let's bring it down to the state level a little bit. Right? Let's drill down to North Carolina specifically. 260,000 directly related jobs, $28 billion in consumer spending, $8.3 billion in wages and salaries, and a little over $1.3 billion in state and local tax revenue. That is money that's out there to be gotten. We can get that money. We can get that economic impact to Lake Lure. There were 3 separate studies done locally here, regionally I should say, for the Nantahala and Pisgah Forest studies. The towns that were impacted are towns like Asheville, Hendersonville, Brevard, Morganton, Old Fort, Marion, Black Mountain, and others. These are our neighbors. These are people that are doing it right. They get it. They understand what they have in front of them, an opportunity in front of them, and they're taking advantage of that. Climbing, let's look at climbing first. 200,000 climbers visiting per year in the Nantahala and Pisgah Forest, spending almost $14 million per year in and around the area, supporting 170 full-time jobs and $4 million in job income. Western North Carolina residents spend an additional almost $13 million a year related to that climbing activity. And we talked about earlier, direct, indirect, and induced economic impact. That's where those numbers come from. Mountain biking, again, in the forests, right? In our region, 435,000 visits per year, $30 million spent in and around the area, 366 full-time jobs and $9 million in income. Western North Carolina residents spend an additional $18 million per year related to that activity, mountain biking. Hadley, not something that really is in Lake Lure, but it's right next door in Chimney Rock, right? Our neighbors, $3.2 million.
They were out there this weekend.
And they were there this weekend. Well, they've loved this year. 2019 has been the best half of the year for these guys. They spent $3.2 million per year in and around the area and supported 35 full-time jobs and $827,000 in job income. These are tangible, real examples of just some of the outdoor recreation opportunities that are available to us here in Lake Lure. Let's just look at a few more here. Chattanooga, Tennessee, climbing over 16,500 non-resident visits to Chattanooga in that winter season of 2015 to 16. It generated $16.5 million in economic impact to the city, and it generated $484,000 in state and local tax revenue annually.
Winter.
In the river. Another small example, in Red River Gorge, Kentucky, 7,500 visits, $2.9 million in economic impact.
Larry, let me add.
Sure.
James, you have all this information, but I was out to the climbing area this past weekend, and my heavens, the number of cars, and I see you clearing ground to triple the parking space out there.
Yep.
So it has a great demand. It brings in visitors in the wintertime because of the south-facing rock face.
Right.
It's time to rock climb is in the wintertime, not the summer when it's so hot.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit on that.
Just the
So I'm
winter.
trying to find some economic development in the winter, this is it.
That's it.
In 2018, the National Recreation and Parks Association, NRPA, did a study, I have it, it's in my folder there, just a couple of points from that study, a quote in there. Parks and Recreation is an engine of substantial economic activity in communities. They also have a case study in there citing Asheville, actually, that was done at a national level, right, but they have a case study, many case studies in that report, in fact. They have a case study citing Asheville's outdoor recreation related to its economic development as well. In 2013, slightly dated, right 5 years ago, but the Rutherford County TDA did a 65-page report. It's in my folder. Economic impact analysis of outdoor recreation. Just two quotes from that report I want to share with you. Communities that have invested in outdoor recreation facilities, events, and marketing get that money back and more. It's a return on investment. Think investment, think big return on it. Also, they said in that study, Western North Carolina and Asheville are hubs of outdoor activity, and Rutherford County is perfectly positioned to become a destination unto itself. That's what we want. Okay. Local use case. Ed just brought this up. Thank you, Ed. Great segue. Hickory Nut Gorge climbing. Let's talk about the gorge for a second. We're part of that, right? The Hickory Nut Gorge climbing potential equal in scale to Chattanooga. Look up in the upper left. Look at the numbers that Chattanooga got. Now, we haven't opened up all those opportunities in the gorge yet, but they're there. They're there. They need someone to help drive it. They need someone to be the ambassador of it. Winter's the predominant climbing season in the gorge. Bouldering is a net plus to rock climbing. We here in Lake Lure have both of those things. The Rumbling Bolt parking lot required expansion just a couple of years after it was initially built, I think. And that speaks to what Ed was just saying about before. Every year, the Carolina Climbing Coalition at CCC hosts the Rumble. In 2018, it brought 300 people to Lake Lure in February, the dead season. Imagine other such recreation events. The opportunities in front of us, we just need to cultivate it and we need to grow it. So back to the assets, right? We should get on board here in Lake Lure. We should get on board with the event, with the ever and continuously growing outdoor recreation wave and start to appropriately treat the Lake Lure Parks and Recreation assets as essential assets, which is what they were, which is what they are, rather. And understand that that is going to be the town's future cash crop, and we are positioned to provide those opportunities year-round. So what do we need to accomplish that? We need a Parks and Rec director who has vision, who has of growth for outdoor recreation, objectives and opportunities that will give us active leadership skills and drive economic development via outdoor recreation. Think return on investment, Kevin. A person that will develop, plan, implement programs, activities, partnerships, and more. Somebody with applied business knowledge, somebody with recreational and park experience, certifications, credentials, and somebody that as much as anything, has passion and drive to fulfill the potential that is Lake Lure Recreation. Commissioners, as my first chart said, we need a face of Lake Lure Recreation for the future of Lake Lure Recreation. And we can start to make everything better and have it benefit the citizenry and the town of Lake Lure and the other thing as well. Thank you.
Okay, so I think in that presentation, you did what you said. You covered a couple different things. I mean, inherent in what you would say describing the position, you now listed the various leadership management requirements or talents that a person to be successful in what we need them to be successful should have.
Right.
Okay. So in terms of the things we need, just in general, in terms of management, we certainly need some leadership, direction, and management. And what I think your advisory board is saying, that needs to be sort of a full-time focus and something that goes beyond the volunteer volunteer leadership that your advisory board has provided in the town in the recent past, right?
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure Jim and Ed will have thoughts on this too. I think, I've been a member of Parks and Rec for, Michelle, you can answer that question, I think it's probably 10 or 11 years now. I'm the third senior statesman after Ed and Martin, okay? I think the Parks and Rec people and the members of that board have a passion. I think we embrace it. I think we do our best to grow the outdoor recreation activities through growing the Parks and Rec and Parks and Rec's assets. I think we've done a phenomenal job as volunteers. I think we are probably late to the party, and so I don't want to waste any more time with regards to getting a dedicated individual to come to be able to promote, be that face of Lake Lowell Recreation, okay? To promote the possible outdoor recreation activities, to cultivate those opportunities, to grow it. We need somebody that has experience with those things that can help us do that, so that we can maximize those assets and fulfill the potential that is there. Absolutely.
Could I ask a question for a good example? Dale, do you know offhand how many customers or rounds of golf you had for the year?
We're right around 5,000 again. We're behind last year.
Okay. Do you know offhand what kind of visitors you've had for Wheat Patch Mountain and Buffalo Creek Park?
Yeah, probably around 400 to 500 a month.
Okay. So that'd come out
6,000.
4,800 to 6,000.
Yeah, 5,000 to 6,000 at this point.
And that's just getting started.
Absolutely.
But there is a lot of press out there that's been going on, I mean, from in-house as well with Laura, but outside town communications, there's a lot of press going on with Conserving Carolina and stuff. And it is going to build, and it's probably going to be quicker than people realize. Keep in mind, the Flying Bridge did not start at 50,000 visitors a year, but that's what it is now.
And if we could get somebody, Stephen, to embrace the opportunity to reach out to those user groups.
Carolina Climbers Coalition,
Mountain bikers.
big group.
All those
They wanna
different use
come here.
cases. If we had somebody that, and as I said, the quote, I put the quote in the presentation, this stuff will pay for itself over again.
And go over that again, as you're saying, in terms of,
Invest in a person that can do that, you've already approved it.
it's not that part, it's the will pay for itself part.
The economic impact
And
from
that
that.
comes, and you said it pays for itself for the town's investment? Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
sure.
How does that work?
Because all the economic impact that you get from direct economic impact, indirect, induced, that comes back to the town in terms of tax revenues.
How does that happen? Sales tax revenue?
Sales tax revenue and otherwise.
We don't get
have
sales
sales
tax revenue.
What other taxes do you get?
Property taxes.
Property taxes,
Yeah.
enhance. The one thing that I didn't see on this sheet that I wanted to talk about, so I'm glad you brought that up. You talked about tourism for the park assets. Parks enhance the property values as well.
People want to come here, especially
When
younger
you-
people,
when you-
with their opportunities for outdoor recreation.
So that drives it, so
Yeah,
that
the lake
case-
is the biggest draw, I guess, right now, but
I would agree with
as far
that.
as that, people.
But I would say
property.
that parks are too, and you would increase the values of properties in that way, and that would be one.
I would say that most people that come here as visitors, not property owners, but visitors, do not get out, use the lake necessarily. They want to use what else is available. Visit the state park, go out hiking. When I first got on the Parks and Recreation Board, we didn't have anything other than the state park, and that was a paid admission. We had a private park. There were no hiking trails per se in the gorge that were available to the public. We did a survey soon after we revised the Parks and Recreation Board back in 2006. The overwhelming need that town residents had was a place to walk and hike. And so that's what we used as our drive to develop a system of hiking trails, et cetera, using unused town property to its best advantage, and that has then opened up additional opportunities, working with partnerships with Conserving Carolina, with Rutherford Outdoor Coalition and others, to develop some volunteer base to help maintain these, to actually build some of them, like Dipper Watts is mostly done with volunteer labor. Yet Buffalo Creek, because of its terrain, we had to hire people to do that. But Dipper Watts has been almost all volunteer, assisted by Melody and her crew when needed to take down trees. But and she knows a couple of grassy areas, but most of the park is maintained by volunteer labor. So we've tried to develop that opportunity using what was available. We had relatively little taxpayer funds. But we've had that drive, that need, trying to provide a need here for the community to get out into the outdoors, promote wellness, etc.
I think there's a lot of aspects of that, you're exactly right.
But we just feel that on the board that we need a person dedicated that has the drive and the desire to develop additional programs, to see the opportunity, to go for grants, this sort of thing, see what the opportunity is out there. So we don't want that person to get lost in other things.
Well, let's then, okay, so I don't think there was any, if there was such a thing as disagreement or disconnect between where I think the town council arrived at subsequent to approving last year the director position at budget time and the position. I think what's happened is we've had a change in our management, town manager, and with that, we asked the new town manager to take a look at our staffing situation in the town and to come back and make recommendations in his best judgment that would best fit the town at this point in time, looking at what we started at, the big picture. And he came back and said, I would recommend that perhaps rather than swallowing the whole elephant at once, that we take a big bite and we get something in the middle between not having anything now in the way of dedicated leadership and having a director department, I mean, in terms of structure, let's talk about structure, department level position. And it was his recommendation that we could successfully attract, recruit, and hire a person, I think, that has all of the things that you ticked off on your list, the vision, knowledge, the ability to understand and manage these facilities, but rather than it being a director level position, that it be a coordinator position. And that in our organization of staff, of departments, the way our town is currently laid out, that we don't really, that position would fall under some department. And in looking around at what department it would best function under, if it was not a department level position, the lake seemed to the manager to be the best fit. And then the supplemental consideration of that was, well, there are recreational, that is a recreational amenity, the lake. And there are times when we have things like we were having combined event, so they kind of can work together. And at least in an interim basis until we grow and correct me if I'm not putting words in your mouth or our mouths, but this was my understanding of where we were, until we can build out from that interim platform to justify having a separate department as Public Works, or not to demean the importance of recreational assets, but in terms of staffing level, that we would nest that up under the lake, and we would combine, in a sense, the functionality of the lake and the land-based recreation. I think what I hear, well, I've seen the minutes and the discussion of the meetings. The concern is that, oh boy, you're basically, what's going to happen here is that our new asset, our new leader is going to get waylaid or taken offline over here and be working on managing the lake when we really want him to be managing these other non-land-based assets. And that's not a good thing. That's not what we were looking for. We were looking for a full-time focus, a person that sets his own agenda, or her own agenda, and is their own master in a sense. I mean, am I on the right track with this discussion here?
Yeah, I think so. I think net it out. There's enough opportunities.
And so to finish, and I'll get to you. So it almost sounds like, irregardless of what the qualifications, capabilities, potential are of a person to be named in this position, and almost to the extent that no matter what the job description tasks this person with, the fact that they're nested up or assigned to some other department other than its own, to you guys, that can't work.
Well, there was also...
that's what you're saying.
There was a point that was said that person would be shared with the lake.
Shared, I mean, shared in the sense that I go back, and just to be sure, go back to the original statement, and you made it, that we're a small town. And regardless of these, and we're a small town with absolutely extraordinary facilities and assets. What small town of 1,400 permanent residents has a lake, a dam, a hydro station, and how many miles of trail did you say? 17 miles of trails with the parks and amenities that we have. You name another small town that you can think of that's got anything near or approaching that level of asset they're responsible for.
There's not another town in North Carolina that has a municipal park the size of the Patrick.
That's absolutely the case.
So the answer to that is none.
None. Okay, so if we say none, we are still a small town. I mean, we can't get out from under that. We can't manufacture residents. We can attract them if we have all these great things. But we are 1,200 at the most residents, and I don't know how many property owners, but a lot more. But let's just say we are what we are, and we have boundaries around us. There's only so much we can do. We can legitimately do, bite off and do well. And some of us feel like we're really, at this point in time, given the situation on our dam, situation with our sewer, situation with our lake silted in, a situation with roads that have been neglected, we are pushing the limits of what we can possibly do as a small town in the near term. In the long term, the sky's the limit. In the near term, we got to deal with our critical infrastructure, and we have to deal with the things that we have to do, and not the things that would be nice to do, or we really should do those, or there are wonderful opportunities. There's no reason why we can't do those. We have to be able to manage our town in a way that treats our critical needs first and deals with other things as they come. And so I think that's what you've seen. That's what the change is. That's where we went from saying, guys, that's a great idea. Let's just hire a director, create a department, go balls out on building recreational events and activities, and let's live happily ever after, to the reality of saying, guys, there's a limit to what we can do, and there's a limit to what we simply can't do responsibly. And that's what I think the change in thinking was, Larry. So I think where we have arrived at, and what we're discussing here, is nobody in the town council, in the discussions I've heard, disagrees with the enormous potential of all of these natural, wonderful resources that we have available to us. and the potential of those things to do great things in the town. It's just a question of what can we do right now versus what can we do a year from now, or 3 years from now, or something like that. We tried in this position, we tried to be able to take a step forward to say, you know what, let's move in that direction. Let's do as much as we possibly can, which is kind of what we felt that was. The other part of this whole, and we've had this discussion, the other part of this whole scenario is I think you guys have done an incredible, masterful job of assembling recreational resources or assets for little or no cost to the town. So we've become the owners of some amazing things like the wheat patch plant. But the follow-on to that is, the bad news is, I used to say this to the dog, be careful of chasing the car because you just might catch it. And what I'm afraid of, and we can deal with this, is that we've kind of caught the car on some of these things, like that car. And I'm concerned, it isn't just the person who leads everything. It's what's that person leading? Where's the staff that's going to take care of all this stuff? Where's the equipment that we don't have right now? Maybe we don't need it, but where's the equipment going to come from to go up on those trails and deal with things that happen out there in the woods? Who's the park ranger in the town that's gone up there and making sure bad stuff's not happening in those 1,300 acres? Well, is that a department head? Or is that a person?
We're trying to figure out.
Is that a person, is it a resource that we add right now, recognizing that we're going to, as we build out on these things, we're going to need more and more and more.
Because that's what I asked about the new campground. Who's going to clean the bathrooms? Are there going to be bathrooms?
Yes. I think the answer is yes. There better be, because...
Now, who's going to clean that? Who's going to be picking up the trash over there? Who's going to be mowing it, weeding? I mean, it's...
So I think I'm not trying to throw cold water or to be an obstacle in the path of progress, and I know this is not good to hear. We're really excited about your mission in life at the great, but I'm just trying to be real about the impacts that this could have on our town, and why our town council, in taking a much larger view of all of the things that are in front of us, may not totally embrace the priority or the primacy of taking advantage of an opportunity that's clearly there. That's all I'm saying.
I'd like you to complain because Larry, that was a great report and impression. Now, what I'd like to do is ask, in the program you've got, Shannon, how do we address, and not just address, but actually handle these opportunities? Because like going out for PR or going out and scheduling an event, a band coming in or anything for this, how are we going to address these concerns? Because it's important that they are addressed.
Well, in fairness to me, Bob, it's the first time I've ever seen the presentation.
Okay. All right, well, we need to address your plan.
Yeah, let me continue.
I agree.
So that's the first time I've seen this PowerPoint presentation. Second is that, in my mind, what I think we can do over a 4 to 5 year period, we can probably get to where we need to be, as has been described. I don't disagree with hardly anything that Larry has pointed out there. So I think that's, I think it's very good. I think it's very helpful. Yeah, I think it's the first time I've ever seen this board pull together those thoughts and rally those thoughts and say, we need a point of the spear. We need somebody that can lead and lead in this way. And I think that is very important, and I think it's a great piece of work that we just saw. But I think we probably need to get there over time, and I don't think that having someone that could fit that bill totally today, they're probably going to ask the question, I've got the title, I've got my charge, where's my resources? And we're going to be paying that person probably about $65,000 or $70,000 a year to implement what we just saw. So I'm not discounting what we saw, but I'm saying over a 4 to 5 year period, we find the right person to fill the PRC position, I think we can get there. So that's where my mind is, given all the constraints that have been so eloquently described by the mayor.
And I think, with all due respect to everybody here, I think that's kicking the can down the road. I think there's an opportunity cost involved with that, of time that goes by. And I think with the approvals that town council made with the Parks and Rec director and the appropriations, the funding appropriations that were made, if you stay on that course, and you can get there quicker, and you can start to realize, and the people of this town will realize the benefits quicker, and the government will realize the benefits quicker.
I'd like to interject something here. Back when we talked about the reorganization in March of 2018, the reorganization that we approved was a Parks and Rec department with lake operations subordinate to that. And the intent was not to dissolve lake operations, but to eliminate the director position. It would be one director. You shouldn't have two. Constant problems for management and so on. And we discussed that. So all this is doing, and so it would have merged it ultimately, and all we're doing now is flip-flopping it. The Lake Operations Department taking the lead, Parks and Rec in it, or part of it, but it's still bringing all those recreation entities together under one organizational structure. Now, what you mentioned in your slides, and again, that was good presentation, was the two departments again, which is not what we approved in reorganization. On the heels of that reorganization, in June, we approved, or in May, we approved the director position based on that organization. Shannon has come forth with an alternate proposal. And I still see what this is doing, what would have happened sooner or later. And that's merging all recreational assets together under one management entity. And regardless of what the name is that you call the person or the department or the personalities, it's bringing all those recreational assets under one umbrella. And that is something that I envision happening sooner or later down the road, just like I envisioned a full-time communications director one day that came along a lot sooner than what I envisioned, but we now have one. I understand you're wanting a dedicated person to nothing but parks and recreation, and that's going to happen in time. I don't think, I've told Shannon, I've told you, I told the board that we reached a compromise, and I support this new concept. My concern is what's not in this job description that needs to be. And Shannon, as the manager, needs to know that, revise the job description, and it's his responsibility to hold the people that fill those positions accountable for accomplishing the task and requirements. And that's where we need to really be at, in my opinion.
Well, in the discussion that we had in the Parks and Recreation Board meeting last month, which led to this meeting, the conclusion of that was that we felt that the Parks and Recreation, in the big picture, including the lake is a preeminent recreational asset that we have in this town. I think everybody would agree with that. I mean, it gives us the opportunities to do everything else.
The town wouldn't be here if it wasn't.
The town wouldn't be here without the lake. There's no question about that. So the discussion that we had at that point was that we could conceive of and understand a director of lake operations, which is Dean Gibbons, which manages and fundamentally drives every aspect of what it takes to effectively manage this lake and manage it so that it's a healthy lake, so that it's that it's productive to take the dredging into account, to take the dam management into account, to take the sewer system that runs under the lake into account, and all of those kinds of things. And have a lake operations manager, director, whatever you want, whatever term you want to use, and have Parks and Recreation, or Lake and Parks Recreation Director that would be responsible for every aspect of promoting recreation, whether it's in parks, whether it's in trails, whether it's a beach, whether it's fishing on the lake, whether it's boating on the lake, all the things that are recreational aspects of what we do in the town. So that's different from what we discussed last spring. And in May, when the council held public hearings for people to come and talk about any aspect of the budget process, there was one individual who came and talked, and that was yours truly, about this lake operations director, and my thoughts that we had the opportunity to make some great strides right now to accomplish what we see as the requirements for lake recreation. Lake Lure, the town of Lake Lure Recreation. And as a result of that, I think that we have taken a good hard look at what every one of the board members who are on the board now, as well as some who are not here anymore for various reasons, Diane Barrett, Linda Turner, Vic Knight, there were a lot of other people who left, but there's always been a tremendous effort by the board, the Lake Lure Parks and Recreation Board, to get involved and do an awful lot of the things that need to be done. And that recreation director is going to rely on us to provide that background, that information, and in some cases, that labor. There's not a single one of these parks and recreation assets in the town, other than the lake itself, that hasn't been influenced one way or another by the board members volunteering time, effort, intelligence, in some cases money, to develop the Parks and Recreation program to the point that it is right now. And our feeling, and I think I speak for all of them, that is that, sure, we can wait, but this is 2019, and I think it's time, we think it's time, to kick this up a notch, if you will. Continue to use the Lake Operations Board in an advisory capacity, and in a volunteer capacity to the extent that we're able to do that. But we also need to get some professional management at the top with the experience, with the certifications, with the credentials, with the education in those areas where it's necessary, so that we definitely have the management acumen to continue to move recreational assets and recreational activities into the forefront and sustain them.
I have often wondered why a specific lake operations department was set up in the first place, and why that isn't a function of Public Works. To have a emphasis within Public Works as far as infrastructure, maintenance, the dam, dredging, all that as part of a normal Public Works function. Why, and then why are those programs such as management of the beach contract and the marina and all that not under Parks and Recreation Department as a separate entity, rather than, and have the maintenance of the lake is part of responsibility of the Public Works, but those other functions that Dean does should be a part of Parks and Recreation.
Commissioner Kilby, you've got something you...
Well, just some observations. And I could ramble a long time, having been a part of a lot of different committees here for 28 years. And I chuckle when I hear Ed talking about the senior programs. When Kathy and I first moved here, we started going to the chapel. We were 4 years old and realized real quick we were in young people's group at 40, and that's great. So what I see in this position, and I think sometimes we get too tied up in titles. Okay, I think the whole United States of America's problem is that too much emphasis is put on titles. So I see that this person in this position is a person that has some real opportunities, okay? And I say to you folks, Martin's not here, so I can say it, feel okay about it, that I have more respect. We've had some discussions individually. We have so much respect for you board members and your abilities and your expertise. People ask me all the time, what's different about Lake Lure? Well, you look around. I'm involved with everybody in the town in my business, and it's just like at the resort. Larry and I have had this conversation before. Part of the problem sometimes everybody wants to be the chief, nobody wants to be the Indian, but in our town boards, we really do a good job of having Indians, and having people that, and ideas, and people come in from outside. I've always said, in our community, the resort and everything, we've got people of all walks of life that come here to live here and be here, and that bring so many assets to the table, and that's why we're different than most any other town that you will find around. And I do think that this position is unique. I don't think there's a job description you can put together for this position. We don't have Little League basketball teams. We don't have Little League baseball. We don't have Little League football. We've got senior citizens board, most importantly, is what we've got. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't want people to come here for hiking and all, because we do. But it goes back to what was said a minute ago. The only revenue that comes to this town is from property taxes. We get no sales tax, right?
You don't get any ad valorem taxes or anything like that? From state sales tax? Per capita?
There's a little bit of something. Yeah.
But that's not really, that's not the point I'm trying to make, because all of that stuff makes us stronger. That brings more people here. We have more businesses. We don't all have to go to the Rock and eat on every day, because that's the only place that's open in January, for lunch and stuff. But I'm just saying, all those things together. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity to have this person in this position. Because I think that person will have to grow into that position. I don't think you're going to hire a person that's going to come in and know exactly what to do. Okay? And that's all I'll say about that position. I also say this. The five of us are faced with issues that this town should have faced before, and they haven't. And we've got major decisions to make, financially, that's going to affect all you all that live within town limits. And so as Kevin said when he first started out, he's a whole lot more eloquent speaking than I am. We have to look at that full picture of what's happening. We have no idea yet exactly what we're going to have to spend on the dam. We have no idea yet exactly what we're going to spend on the sewer system. It's already looking like way more than what we thought, possibly in one place, and maybe not as much as we thought in another place. But all that to say, we have a new town manager. We all have the confidence in Shannon that he'll do a good job. But remember, Shannon don't really make any decisions unless it comes through the five of us. And he reports to us. So don't feel like if we put this person in this position that they're not going to be monitored. We have all the confidence in the world in his ability to take. And we see it already in the town with the attitude among the town employees and stuff about working together and achieving things. So I am totally in favor of this position. I don't think we need to get ourselves wrapped around titles and what we call it. I think it's a great opportunity. So if we find the right person, Larry, you're exactly right. It'll be amazing over the next years what that develops into. That's all I guess.
I seem to pick up from the discussion that the primary heartburn with the proposed position is that it's only 75% Parks and Rec and not 100% Parks and Rec. Again, don't get wrapped around the title. The person, whoever fills the job. If this description is comprehensive enough for what's needed for Parks and Rec. It seems that the biggest heartburn, I hate the word, but is that it's only 75% and not 100%. Because it would be 75% for this and then working with the lake operations in the rest of the time. Is that a correct assessment?
If you look at me. Well, I mean, no, I'll be happy to respond. In part, I think that's true. But I think if you look at, and I don't care, you can call him Bob, right? It doesn't matter. Susan, it doesn't matter. The position that was approved as a director had a job description that developed afterwards. Right?
Right, yeah, proposal.
Right.
That we never approved. We never approved that job description. We approved the job position.
Right.
And said we want a revised job description.
Okay, so that job description was, in my opinion, because I've seen both, I saw it.
Right.
I think Ron came out with it before he left. And then I saw the coordinator position that Shannon, I believe, developed. That coordinator position was a watered-down job description of the previous Parks and Rec director position that Ron developed. And even that one wasn't as comprehensive as it probably should have been. But as you look at the needs of our recreation opportunities, both with the park and the lake, I am not in favor of that watered-down coordinator / doer / whatever you want to call that person. That is not a active leadership role. And the concern is that at the director level, which has primary focus on the lake, which we all agree on, that you're not going to get that active leadership role for the parks and recreation, outdoor recreation opportunities that need to be. That's part of the concern, if that makes sense.
It doesn't to me, and I'll tell you why, not to be critical. But what in that description is missing from leadership? I'm looking at
Which description
that you're not in favor of. What verbiage, what function, what task, what is missing? Other than the hierarchy and structure.
No, I don't think the intent of that is to have that person go out and drive, let's call it business, outdoor recreation business. I don't see that in that at all.
Can I respond?
Yeah.
So the Parks and Rec director position you guys are talking about, I've never seen that anywhere. So this, what you have before you today was something that was brainstormed and was sent out to you guys for review and feedback. That's where that came from. So the director position that Ron Nally created, I've never read that. I've never seen it. I wouldn't mind reading it, but I never have seen that. The second, the 75-25 is a way to try to quantify what my expectations would be for this person as they go about doing their duties. Described in the position description, but also to give you some sort of inkling as to what my expectations are for them to be focusing on. 75%. And if you tried to put a number on every time it mentions something Parks and Rec related versus something lake related, it's probably about 95% Parks and Rec related and 5% lake related. So I say all that to say that 75-25 was just to give an expression of what I would expect from that person to give day to day and what they're doing. Sometimes it's not day to day, sometimes it's going to be work 4 weeks on a Parks and Rec program that may be take 3 days and work on something lake related. But overwhelmingly, it's to be Parks and Rec related.
Can I ask what the 25% of the lake would entail?
Simply would be working with Dean
Right.
on
But
things
it's
related to the lake.
like recreation programs on the lake or maintaining the lake?
It could be, it could be.
So
But it could be
like
both.
patrolling the lake and things like that?
Because of where I'm trying to take this, Ed, I think that person has to be working with Dean so that they understand the lake. Dean's not going to be here forever. They've got to get their bottom in a boat and get on the lake and understand how that lake functions, how that lake works. Because in the end, if we create one department, one director, I certainly want whoever's sitting in that seat to understand both worlds clearly. The lake from the maintenance perspective, the lake from the recreation perspective, and all things land-based recreation. So that person, if they're going to be totally 100% Parks and Rec, then it makes more sense to say that person needs to be a director. We need to think about getting them the resources they need to maintain the programs as you guys would like. And right now, my path to get us there is a little slower than what I'm hearing and what I think is fiscally responsible for this town. And so that's where I am, that's where I'm coming from.
And I think what you just said, Shannon, is going to be a whole heck of a lot more than 5%, and arguably more than 25% of that individual's time to get up to speed with the lake.
Well, Larry, we're sitting here trying to armchair this thing, and at the end of the day, it's going to be what that person does. And I'm just giving you expression of what I'm thinking.
20% would be a day a week. Do we really think that this person's going to spend a day a week doing lake operations? I don't think so. I don't think anywhere near that.
I don't think so either.
So, very unusual, and it's a lot, so we'll give them 2 cents in. I think a lot of what this position, from our perspective, is trying to accomplish is we don't have backup today. If something happens to Dean, if he gets run over by a truck or wins the lottery, and, Dean, if you win the lottery, you gonna still continue to work?
Yeah, I'm going to retire a little early.
All right. My point is, we don't have a backup, and there's a wealth of knowledge there that needs to be imparted somewhere. And, yeah.
I agree, I wouldn't debate that at all. I think, John, the problem that I'm having, the heartburn I'm having with that is that it comes at the sacrifice of the opportunity for the Parks and Recreation area.
Well, it's not a sacrifice until in the sense that we're taking something away, because we're adding to. As I think about directing, you go out and hire a director, then they're going to want staff, they're going to need equipment. I think if we move in the direction that you guys have suggested, which I think is excellent, and I wish we had money to, whether we weren't even having this, haven't had the discussion, but we just, we had the money there to do it. But if we're moving in that direction, and that is and where you guys, what you described is where we want the land. We've accomplished something. And in the meantime, we will get a firm grip on how much we're going to have to spend on the sewer and how much we think we're going to have to spend, how much we'll have to spend on the dam. Those numbers will gel. Personally, from what I've seen, I think the dam will come in less than we thought, and the sewer is probably going to be more. But those are real numbers. And one thing I didn't mention, I didn't think it made that much difference at the time, but on these sheets here where you saw the sewer is a big plus, that's not real, because that is, we had to raise the rates to get the $9 million loan. We had to show that we had the assets to, or had the income to pay for it before they would give it to us. So that money is going into a fund to be used on the sewer system as we put it in. So that's not, that spread is not real, and we won't know what those numbers are for a while. And we had a significant tax increase, as you all know, this year. And, you know, as much as everybody around this table loves the trails and all the recreational facilities, we also have to think about everybody in the community. So it's, you know, from where I'm coming from right now, I want to try to get to where you guys have suggested, but I see it coming a little further down the road rather than right now. I think we take a good step in that direction now, and then, you know, continue to have that goal out there and see what assets we have. I think we've got some pretty good sources right now, and some personnel assets that we can kind of filter into this, and the solution may be more than one person working on this. I think,
And we've done a little bit of that.
Yeah.
With Laura. And so the events piece, we added hours to Laura's position. One of the things that we added to her position description was to work on and coordinate events. And so we are meeting some need there. I understand the type of events you're talking about, the outdoor piece, something like you would see at Anahalo or Chattanooga. I've been to those places. Ironman contest and the other things. I see it, I understand it. I think we have to keep in mind that we are a town of 1,200, that we have to have redundancy in our personnel, and that is something we have not had. When Anita Taylor passed away, it sent a shockwave through our little bitty organization like we did, because we didn't have anybody trained to do payroll, personnel, and we're trying to cross-train. We're trying to get people to understand that even though we're small, we've got to have redundancy. You've got to get comfortable wearing more than one hat, 2 hats, 3 hats. It's the way we're going to have to do business. And we have to continually bring somebody in. They have to come in with that understanding. You don't get to specialize in what you do like you do when you're in a town of 4,000 or 10,000 or 20,000. You've got to be willing to do other things, and you've got to multitask. You've got to allow for thinking outside of your box and your zone. All those things are important to us, and that's the other thing.
Let me just ask, does that mean you're going to train Dean in Parks and Recreation?
I was just going to say.
And it sounds like, John, in all due respect, it sounds like this person is going to be under Dean for a long time, learning what he does on the lake. So that 25-75 doesn't sound realistic at all.
I think we can look at this creatively. I don't know that they absolutely have to be under Dean to learn what Dean is doing. You know, as long as they're getting the knowledge and we're getting the redundancy.
How long did it take Dean to learn what he does?
Yeah, and even with personnel, as much of a shockwave as that was, there are a lot of towns around with personnel directors, and there are assets out there to draw on. There are other people with similar experience. We've got the only lake in the state with all the complexities that we have around here. We've got the only Marine Commission that I know of in Lake Lure because of the law of Lake Lure, which is specific to our lake. There's just so many things that make our lake so unique that it would be extremely difficult for someone to step in if something, God forbid, happened to Dean tomorrow and step into his shoes and
We don't dispute that at all.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
no.
And I think the door swings both ways. I was on your subject, Paul. I think I'll bet you most of the people sitting around this table have been in senior level positions, supervisory level at least, executive level positions. And I think back on my career, I know that I've learned as much or more from the people who have worked for me than they did from me. And I think what we're setting up here is that door swings both ways in terms of redundancy. And who's to say we would set up a department head, a solo position, here comes a person, you're the director of Parks and Rec, and a year from now, your wife gets a job in another town, and you decide to move. Then we've got no one, and we're starting back from scratch, or the bus runs over that person and not Dean. In the period of time, so over a year, what I'm expecting to occur is that Dean's going to learn as much from whoever this resource is that we put in there, as that person learns about the lake from Dean. And so I think we will build that redundancy by linking the two people together in some fashion where they work together. And I would hope that Dean respects the fact that that position is the focus and intent and the mission of that position is to deal with the Parks and Rec function and not the operation of the lake. And I think that Shannon clearly understands that and will oversight that situation and make sure that they honor that. And the town council, you just heard us state our position, is that we view that position as important and the mission to be, in a sense, a standalone mission with the supplemental thing of just pay attention and learn something from Dean while you're working with him about the lake. I mean, in a very general context, that's what we're talking about here. So that's why I wanted to get away from the structural aspect of this. I mean, I know, there's that risk, that suddenly it's going to get hijacked. But in some ways, we just have to trust each other and say, I trust you. You said this is what they're going to do. You said that was going to be their mission. You said you weren't going to allow that to get hijacked. And I trust that you're going to do that. And if you do that, then I really don't see why that can't work, is what I'm saying.
So a few things, right? And I've talked a lot, and I apologize, you guys are probably sick and tired of talking, but I know each and every one of you guys, right? I've worked with you on committees, I'm your customer, I go to church with you, I've had meals with you, whatever the case may be. I respect you guys tremendously. I appreciate your time today. I really do. We all do. I hear what you're saying. Honestly, I'm disappointed in a sense, right? Because I think it's going to, in delaying it, shortchange the opportunity that we have with outdoor recreation here in the town. From that perspective is my disappointment. Okay. Do we get there? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose. The fact that we have, from the board, let it be known that that is our goal, that is our desire, that is what we feel needs to happen in terms of, from a Parks and Rec board perspective, being able to maximize the opportunities that we have here in the town. I'm happy. I'm happy we've had this conversation. Happy you guys know how we feel about that. And I hope it is held accountable at all levels for us to get there. I will say with regards to the job descriptions, and I don't think this is the forum, Kevin, to sit there and start picking apart bullets. I really don't, right? That is not a good use of y'all's time, is what I'm trying to say. But I think it needs to be done. It's kind of two positions that you're talking about then. It's the lake, what do we call it, Shannon? Lake and Parks?
Parks and Rec Lake.
Parks and Rec Lake, okay? And then a coordinator, right, down there. We did, after asking for it, get some opportunity to give input to the coordinator position, but not to this other position up here.
I anticipated this, because it says nothing.
Nothing.
Parks, nothing. So
Zero.
that's the next installment. I get that, yeah.
And so I've acknowledged that there are things in the director position description that need to be changed. Okay, so the director.
As well as the coordinator, I think, I would add to that, Shannon, just to, because I think they were being done separately or not at all, right? And so I think there needs to be a coordinated effort. If this is going to be a skills transfer type of position as well, bi-directional, oh, by the way, from what I'm understanding.
That's right.
Then these job descriptions need to be worked on, and they need to be fine-tuned, and I would request that the input from Parks and Rec Board is allowed.
Yeah.
One more thing. I'm disappointed too that since I was elected as a commissioner that we're facing the issues that we're facing, that the time I ran, I didn't know that's what we're going to be facing. Okay, so I say that to say, we never really know what we're going to face. But just like we've had to do in the past 12 months, is we've had to make some tough decisions, and we're getting ready to have to make tougher decisions as we go through this. You guys have done exactly the same thing. You know, you've done a great job with your charge as members of the Parks and Rec, and we don't always get exactly what we want. You know, we certainly don't. And the only way we get anything is through people's property taxes, and the only way we get criticized mostly is through people's property taxes. So, you know, it's not always easy. But I think everybody at this table can agree that we can work together to make what's the best decisions for the town of Lake Louise.
What I would suggest, what I would suggest is that we do exactly what we did before. I've already sent the position description to you. If you have suggestions or recommendations, send those back to me. I'll take those under advisement as we write this position description. But I want to say this, that as we revise these position descriptions, these position descriptions are purview of the town manager. And that is something North Carolina General Statutes gives a town manager and council manager form of government. So I'm not going to give it to you, Larry, and say, write it. I will say, take it, analyze it, just like I did before, and send me back your thoughts, and I'll take that under advisement for inclusion in that position description. Because I have to fill it. I'm responsible for filling the position and managing the person that's there. Okay, so.
And neither are we able to write that.
That's where I am on that issue, so I want to be very clear about that.
One of the biggest things here is I want to make sure that we don't lose this focus for our Parks and Rec. That when we are doing this, every 6 months or so, we update. But also, I'd like to ask council, mayor, and town manager, let's get together every 6 months or once a year and say, are we on track with this person? And let's have a discussion and say, where are we doing proper or where are we falling short? Let's meet 6 months from now and say, okay, 6 months after the position's filled, is this what we're looking for and can we tweak it?
I think the meetings are, I think the meetings are,
absolutely.
I think the meetings are fine. And I would love to hear the feedback about progress being made as far as critiquing an individual.
Yeah.
That's my job.
No, I'm talking about the topic. I'm looking at.
So what I would want to see is a meeting where we say, well, I saw this person doing so-and-so, and I think they need to do this. Let's don't get into that.
No, here's a goal.
Tell me about progress and hitting the milestones that we feel like we need to hit. I'm all for it.
Well, and it would help the Park and Rec would maybe consider your priorities as far as milestones. You want events first, you want climbing first. I'd like to suggest that you set the milestones in priority that you feel are most important, whether it's communication and events, or is it, like I said, something to do with bringing people in for a band? Give all of us your direction on what you'd like to see as priorities. What is the hottest priority in the next 30 days, 60 days?
And this person is going to be your staff representative, I assume, right? Yes. To the board? So either the coordinator position, if that's what it's called, that person's going to be here, and if they can't be, I would assume that person's supervisor would be here for that board meeting. And vice versa for the Lake Advisory. I see both of them working as a team. The objective is to manage all of the recreational assets properly. That's whether it's on land or on water. Between the two of them, they would do that. Dean did not walk into that job knowing what to do, I guarantee it. He knew how to drive a patrol car, and because of that, he could drive the patrol boat. Other than that, he walked into that job blind. Dean, you walked into that job blind, I remember. And there was nothing in there in the way of guidelines, but he had learned it along the way. I would hope that between the two of the folks in those job positions, that if they says, hey, this is way too much for one person to handle, or for the two of us, that they would come online and tell you that.
Sure.
I would hope they would be
Well,
this smart.
the bottom line is the staff is here to serve this community. The staff reports to the manager, I report to this board. You guys are advisory and you have fantastic ideas. You've worked hard. I've been here since the very beginning when this board was created, from the very beginning. And I've seen it evolve, and I've witnessed what this board has been able to do. And I don't want to see anything you've done fall to the wayside. And I'm not going to have staff come work for you that's not going to serve you and do what you need to have done. That's my commitment to you. The organizational structure and the other things, that's paper. This person will be here to serve and work for this board closely.
Being part of management, you all know that if you don't set a milestone for a task and prioritize, nothing gets done. That's why we do construction. They say, oh, build a building. If you don't have some milestone dates, it never happens. And we need to do the same here. We need that from you guys to say, this needs to be done, hopefully, on such and such a date, something's moving on it. Maybe not completed, but at least the task is being tackled. So I feel that's very important, or you will never make progress.
I think the opportunities here for the board to grow and to groom and work closely with a person. You hire a director from another town, from another entity, they will come and impress upon you what their vision is. You have an opportunity to instill your direction and your vision in the person that we bring to the table. And that's an opportunity to grow them in the way that you feel like they need to be grown. That's absolutely unique to Lake Lure.
I appreciate all your thoughts, and I appreciate the offer. I will say that is not something that's going to happen in 1 or 2 days via emails in terms of the feedback back to you, okay? We need to get together a workshop of our own once or twice to get that and to put those priorities and those kind of things together. That's going to take a lot of thought. It's going to take some time.
And they'll change.
As quickly as we can,
Right.
but it's not going to be emails over the next couple of days. You know, that's all I want.
I never asked for a work plan in a couple of days there. What I said was the position description. I'll send that to you, look at it, work on it. But here's the other thing about a work plan. Here's what I would ask you to do. You might want to wait until we fill the position before you start developing a work plan and give it to someone and say, these are your milestones, you got to hit them. Integrate someone into that process so that you become a unit and you work together and you get buy-in from the person that's going to serve you regarding those items. And so you may want to wait until we find the right fit for you to start down that road of developing a work plan.
Well, I would say that with regards to the input on the job description, I wouldn't change my thought on that at all. We still have to get together and meet on that one. With regards to a work plan, I don't think it's too soon to start talking about it, but I understand what you're saying. I don't disagree with what you're saying with regards to the work plan, okay? But I do feel that we need to get together as a group, together, not just via emails.
It'll be a special meeting.
Right.
It will have to be to
Right.
make it legal.
Right, and that's fine.
To get a word in finally?
You want to talk to
Break in there.
them?
First, I'll express my gratitude to the town and the town manager for putting this package together, not just this meeting, but the vision of moving forward from a passive recreation program where we just gave them a facility and nobody directed anything, it was pretty much haphazard, to the vision of an active recreation program where we begin to create programs and provide the directed facility usage. You know, it's going to be a whole different world for us, and even though we haven't solved all the world's problems today, I firmly believe it's a step in the right direction. We will modify it, Shannon will work with us, the staff will work with us, and part of our job, and I said this at our last meeting, is to make sure that that person, whoever it is that you hire, does what we want them to do. So, I mean, we share that responsibility with Shannon and the staff, and, you know, if you hadn't had the vision to move forward, Town Council, we would still be back where we were 2 years ago, which we had a lot of facilities and people with chainsaws running around trying to fix it. So this will be a great step forward. The town and the community is going to appreciate, you know, your decision to move forward. It's a bold path for a town of only 1,400 residents. So I'm excited, I'm appreciative of your step to move us forward, and we'll fight all the way through it, because we are passionate. So we're gonna say, you know, we want the best for our people, and you do too. I mean, we're on the same team, and we can pull it all together. So thanks for this first step, and we'll work with everyone to make it even better.
Thanks. Yeah.
I just have one question, since I'm getting all this. So say this, we do the Parks and Rec coordinator, whatever that position's called, and they work with Dean, and say 2 years down the road, I don't know your plans, Dean, but say he wins the lottery and he retires, and we bump this person up to take Dean's job. Is this, whatever it's called, a permanent position in the town? So it's not like we're testing and then 3 years down the road?
No, we
It
have
will
to
be-
refill if that's the way
Right,
it
but
works,
then-
and we have
but
an
then
open position.
There will always be a
Yes.
recreation position in the town.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm just asking.
Yeah, that's the intent.
The intent is for it to be part.
And grow, yeah, as our facilities grow, the programs grow, that it gets bigger.
Yeah, for sure.
And since I haven't said anything yet.
All right.
Tom's up.
And I think the other thing about meshing the time, the 75, 25, whatever it ends up, the part of developing the programs and things, we've gotten what Shannon was saying, Laura's going to be involved with that. So this person, whoever it is, isn't going to be stuck at their desk trying to develop the whole program for whatever programs come up, because he's going to have 15%.
Events, yes, you love events.
So that's part of it also. And it is a position I think you gotta grow into. When I became a superintendent at 23, I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
I can tell you, Dean's learned a whole lot more about parks in the last 6 months than he ever thought he
I
wanted.
mean, we certainly hope this person has been involved with it, and so they've developed their own ideas of what they would do if they were in charge, but yet they have a background of being able to dial the telephone. That was always the most important thing when I sent one of my assistants out. They know how to dial the telephone and call when they need help. And everybody that called for a reference, that was the first thing I would say. They know how to dial the telephone, and they'd say, what do you need?
Yeah.
They know how to call me, I can help them out. So,
No limitations.
same thing with this person, they gotta have a little bit of a, they gotta be part of a tree.
Okay, is there any other discussion? If there's none, I would, from the town council meeting standpoint, I would entertain a motion to adjourn, Bob. All right, is there a second? All those in favor, aye? Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.